Quick little disclaimer here at the beginning of this video. My way of doing things may not necessarily be the right way, but it does get done, and we did some good work on this. So stick around, see what we do. Hey everyone, welcome back to Brainwave for Garage. Today we're going to be making this look like this. So everything on the list that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be replacing the spring, the strut, new rotor, new pads, and we're going to be painting the spindle, the dust shield, and the caliper. And we're going to make it look all nice up in here. Now, if you're asking yourself why I'm not going further and, you know, doing the A-arm and everything else like that, it's down the line. I want to put in a tubular K-member and tubular K-arms, so I'm not too worried about that stuff. But everything else is going to be staying. So I want to paint it up and make it look nice. First thing we're going to do, get the caliper off. You're going to need a 3/8 Allen key to get the bolts for the caliper out. I got one for my ratchet, just going to make it a little easier. Now that those bolts are out, you can go ahead and pull your caliper and pads. One thing I like to do when I'm here is go ahead and we're going to push that piston back into the caliper. So you're going to use an old brake pad in here, push it up against, and you're going to take a C-clamp like this, and you're just going to press it in. Okay, now that we have arrived here, since I'm pulling the caliper off to paint it, I'm going to put a vice grip right here to hold pressure on the line. And then we will undo the bolt down here, and as soon as it comes out and we separate the line from the caliper, we'll put the bolt back in to keep any fluid from leaking out. A little bit is going to leak out, but try not to get all of it out. And just like that, good to go, caliper removed. Like I said, you're gonna leak a little bit, but as long as you keep most of the fluid in there, you should be fine, because these are all gonna have to be bled anyways. And the other thing is too, is if you have really old brittle lines, this may pop one. Mine's actually decent. I think these got replaced maybe a year or two before I bought the car, so I didn't have to worry about that. But if you have really, really tight brittle lines, when you put your vice grip down on it and you clamp it down, it could, you know, pop them. All right, now we're going to remove this old rotor. First thing you're gonna wanna do is pop your dust. Now that we're in here, we need to remove the castle nut that is holding the caliper on. So there should be a cotter pin. There is. Peel that back. Get a pair of pliers. I found it works the best. We're just gonna rebend that guy back, and we can pull it up like so. You can get on it and pull it off, like so. Now we can pull the rotor off, just like that. All right, well, that spindle doesn't seem to be too bad. To get the dust shield off, you're gonna need a 7/16 socket. I'm just using a long one here, just because that's what I picked up. I'll pop this guy off. All right, so for this next part, the best way to go about this that I have done is loosen your strut at the top. Here. Loosen it at the top of the strut tower, just to where the nut holding it down is just kind of finger tight. That way it'll still keep it in place. And then after that, you're gonna start removing these guys. All right, so up top here, into the shock tower, the rod itself, the end of the rod, is a 10 mil, and the nut on it is a 13/16, and you just want to loosen. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, prior to pulling the strut out, put a jack underneath your A-arm. Keep it nice and there. You guys need a little persuasion. Adjustable hammer. There we go. So now, spindle's free. Well, free from being held in. to the shock tower. So now we're gonna go ahead and take the ball joint off here, and then once that's off, we'll undo the castle nut that's holding the spindle to the ball joint in the A-arm, and we'll pull that off. Now that the control arm is moved, or not the control arm, the tie rod, and go ahead and start working on getting the spindle off. Now the spindle should lift up. There. Persuasion. All right. So now that we're here, we're going to disconnect the sway bar end link. And then once that's done, we're gonna drop the A-arm and we're gonna pop this old spring out. Okay, got the spring out. Sorry I didn't record that. Basically, I just lowered the jack, let the A-arm come down, and then the spring was in there, and I just got under, pried it up, and it popped out. So we're good to go on that. All right, now for cleaning all the parts that we have. So I have my caliper, my dust shield, and my spindle. There's a few different ways to clean these, and it all really kind of depends on, you know, what you have access to. For me, I have access to a wire wheel on my drill and some wire brushes. And mainly I'm just going through with the wire wheel, cleaning everything off the best I can, and then getting down into the little areas that the wire wheel isn't touching very much, like all the little crevices, and taking my brush and just scrubbing it out and getting it clean. So like this side, I've been cleaning pretty decent, got a lot of the old rust and crap knocked off, and you compare that to like over here. I did this part. You can see the difference. So I'm gonna knock as much of the rust and dust off as I can, and once that's all done to all three parts, we're gonna start laying primer down. Once you finish getting these guys as clean as you can, we're gonna be ready for paint. So what I'm going to do here is I'm gonna lay 2 coats of primer and then 2 coats of color. The dust shield and the spindle are gonna be black, caliper's gonna be red. I may have already said that. If I did, sorry. All right, for primer, I'm using the VHT engine enamel. The reason I bought this is because I have a new oil pan that I was gonna paint up, but I used about half a can doing this the first time, so I might end up using the rest of this as well. But yeah, so we're just gonna start shooting. I'm painting all of these in primer together just because they all have to be flipped and moved. So we're gonna do the first side in the 2 coats and then flip and then do the other side in 2 coats. Is it gonna be a little uneven? Yeah, but I don't really care. Okay, first coat is laid down. While we're waiting for that to dry up, we'll go ahead and get the new spring into the car. Now we're gonna go ahead and get the new spring in. I've compressed it a bit. Should be able to fit right in there. With these springs, it said they want the flat side to go up and then this side down below. So that's what we're gonna do. We should be able to just sneak it in there. All right, once it's seated in your A-arm, go ahead and pull the spring compressor out. Make sure you have your jack securing your A-arm when you do this. Okay, and just like that, the new spring is in, secure, and going nowhere. Now it's ready to start reassembly. Our parts over here are ready for our second coat of primer. Second coat has been laid. Next thing I'm going to do is flip them over and do the same thing all over again. I'm probably not going to film that part. The next thing I'll film is when we're starting to lay color down. Right, first coat has been laid, and we're going to follow up with 2 more coats and let it dry, and it should be good. And that's the last coat on the caliper. So once that dries, I'm going to set it off to the side. We'll let it dry overnight, and I'll start painting those guys. We're going to let these kind of, I mean, they're basically dry right now, but we're going to let it just like cure overnight, basically. And we should be good to put it back on. And then I went ahead and just shot a couple of coats on the bolts for those for the caliper, and then that's for the strut where it connects to the spindle. So just to give it a little bit more, you know, niceness, because get rid of all the rusty look off that. So here we have our finished products. Turned out pretty good. We're gonna start getting these things put back onto the car and getting the brake job finished up. And then it'll be sitting on the ground on all four wheels again. Okay, so I went ahead and got the tie rod hooked back up to the spindle. I also got the castle nut down for the spindle. Now we're going to go ahead and get the strut put back in. All right, cool. It's in. We're gonna tighten these guys down. All right, do I know if there's a torque spec on these? Not really. I just torqued them down to the old Ugga Dugga and call it good. With our painter's tape removed, we can go ahead and reinstall our dust shield. And voila, we are now ready to put our new rotor on. We got to grease the bearings up and install the seal before we can do that. All right, and while you're here, go ahead and reinstall the brake line bracket. Ooh, a good thing to do before I forget. Let's go ahead and get this guy bolted down up at the top. Okay, it's installed. This is a different style than what the stock one is. So one, the bolts are different. This won't even thread onto this. The threads are different. And two, where you put your wrench on the shaft to hold it in place is also different. It's on the side here rather than on top, because this is where your adjustability is in these adjustable shocks. So just know that going in. It may also be a good idea to go ahead and thread the bolt before you install it, just to, you know, make it a little bit easier, because this has the stuff at the top of it to hold it onto the threads. So if you already pre-thread that before going in, it's going to make it a lot easier on installation. Okay, now we get to have the fun job of packing our wheel bearings. So you're going to need wheel bearing grease, probably some rubber gloves. I got these guys. And you're going to need your wheel bearings, of course. So for these, there are two different sizes. You have a larger size and then a smaller size, like this. The larger one goes towards the back of the rotor, which faces, you know, the dust shield and the spindle. And the smaller one goes towards the front, where the dust cover will be. They make an actual bearing packing tool. I do not have one of those, plus I don't mind doing it the old school way. So the old school way of doing this is getting your wheel bearing. Alright, take it out, inspect it, make sure it spins nice and free. You're going to get your wheel bearing grease, and then I get a pretty sizable amount of it here, like that. I'm going to put it in the palm of my hand, take my wheel bearing, and I'm literally just going to scrape the wheel bearing into the grease. And what that does is it forces the grease up into the bearing, and after you do this quite a few amount of times, you'll see it start to come through. You're going to get quite a bit of excess here in the middle, so I just take my fingers, spread it back out onto my palm, and just keep working my way around. And after a while, you'll start to see it start squeezing out the top as you keep packing it in. So at this point, I just take whatever leftover grease that I have. There's going to be quite a bit of it, and this stuff is nasty, hence the gloves. All right. Take whatever grease you have left over that you can, you know, scrape off reasonably. You get that? Throw it on your spindle. Grease that spindle up. And then I'm going to go ahead, take the bearing, and drop it down inside the rotor. Now that we have that rear bearing in the rotor, it's time to put the seal in. So I'm going to go ahead, take the gloves off, do a little inside out, try to keep it as contained in there as possible, and we'll go ahead and get the seal in. To install the seal, first get the seal. What the hell did I just do with it? Here it is. Okay, so you're going to take your seal. You want to get it as lined up as possible. Try to get it nice and even in there. Now, they make a tool to do this. I do not have said tool. What I do have is this guy from my ball joint kit, and it actually sits rather nicely right on top of that seal, nice and even. So now we're going to get a hammer and we're going to press this seal in. You want it to be nice and even and completely sealed around your rotor here. You don't want any sides sticking up or protruding. You want a full seal. All right, now we'll put the rotor back on. Now we got the front bearing in. Careful, it might pop out on you, so just, you know, keep an eye on it. Yep, there she goes. Just wanting to. There it is. There we go. All right. And just like when we took it off, we got this little locking plate thing that rides right on the, there's a little key in here that goes up against. Take our castle nut, thread it back on. Now, there's a few different methodologies out there on how to properly set this castle nut. I have been taught, crank it down till you feel resistance. There's some there. And then back it off a quarter of a turn. It's not going anywhere. It's all good, free spinning. So then place your cotter pin in there and then put your caliper and pads on and you're good to go. Here it is. Everything is back together and looking like it's in the right spot. Everything's all tightened down, so now I just got to clean up a little bit. We'll get the wheel back on and put the car back down on the ground. Old girl's finally sitting on all four tires again after like a week and a half, maybe two. Just been doing this as I had the time. But I'll tell you what, due to the condition of these old struts and springs, I don't think she actually lowered any. In fact, she might be sitting just a little bit higher. Granted, I gotta move it so everything can settle and you know, get to where it needs to be. But I think the front end is actually sitting up a little higher than what it was on the old stock stuff. These here are the old parts. That strut doesn't even push the shaft back out anymore. And these springs are just, well, not very good. But anyways, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching this video. We're gonna be having way more stuff coming up here soon. I gotta rebuild that transmission. I think I did a video on that, you know, a while ago when we were doing the original 700 R4. So I don't know if I'll do a video on that one. Maybe make a couple shorts about it. But going to be pulling the engine here soon so we can get the new transmission in. All the parts for the engine have basically come in. I'm still waiting on my connecting rods and my pistons. But I have a whole table of goodies, and really excited about that. It's my new double pumper carb and my forged crankshaft. I'll make another video on all the parts and everything that we're going to be doing to this, but super excited. And this little 305 based engine is going to be quite a ripper.